What is happening, webheads? Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. I'm your host, Mike Spider Slayer, getting ready to bring you another episode of After the Poll, the video series where we discuss all the comic books that I read for the comic book week, except those new number ones. If you guys want to check that out, there is a video series called Worthy Ones where we talk about Ultimate Spider-Man, Avengers, Twilight. So I'll leave you a link up top or a video at the end. Okay, so if you guys love this type of thing, just go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I bring it to you every single week. And before we dive into it, I just gotta give a quick shout out to Mutant Beaver Comics. Guys, they have over 4,000 exclusive variant covers in their store. So if you love variant covers, go ahead and check them out. I have a promo code in my description box below, Corner10. Not only can you save 10% off of the first purchase, but every other purchase after that. So check out mutantbeavercomics.com. All right, guys, so here we go with this week's episode. Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. This is issue 3, 28 pages, $4. Guys, the legacy numbering here is 100. So this is the 100th issue of Spider-Man 2099, and you would expect that this comic book would deliver with an impactful story, something memorable, right? No, unfortunately not. It does not happen. Steve Orlando, for me, does not deliver in this. Jason Moore is the artist. For me, out of the 3 issues that have been released out of this series, this is definitely the weakest artwork and probably one of the weakest stories as well. I did not enjoy Werewolf by Night 2099. He was not an interesting character. All he was a character here that was held in blackmail to stop his curse from changing into a werewolf and maybe possibly dying if he did not get this antidote. So he was forced to do battle against Miguel O'Hara 2099. I would love to see this series just in general dive deeper into the character that some of us have really enjoyed and learned to love over the years, right? But they just haven't really done that with this series as a whole, and it feels again like it's more a bunch of one-shots than a continuing story. Now, they may be introducing a whole bunch of new characters in the 2099 universe, maybe for a future ongoing, but this adds no depth to the character whatsoever. The villain is very forgettable. Overall, this book is a D for me, and I would say probably pass this one up if you haven't picked it up already, but it might hesitate you on picking up the next issue. I thought this one would be really good. X-Men issue 30. All right, guys, so here we go. 28 pages, $4. This book is written by Jerry Duggan, and the art is done by Phil Noto. Now, I'm not a fan of really Phil Noto's artwork. I think he did Marauders at one point. I just don't like the way the characters are drawn. They just seem off to me. Just a little blocky, like this. I mean, to me, this is just not what I expect, right? The story was a little bit different, and it did come back to a point where the High Evolutionary was once in this comic a little while ago, so it kind of touches back on a story a little while ago. And the way this book opens up is like this, and you're like, hey, what's going on here? And this is not the first comic book where we get to see this going on in there. That's not what you expect in the beginning pages of an artwork of a X-Men story, right? But really what this story is, it's more about Sync and Talon here, which is the older version of Laura when she was stuck in the vault. And what happens in this comic is we wind up seeing the X-Men come together to try to stop Orcus's like hostage situation when it comes to regular civilians, about possibly killing them if they see mutants alive and whatnot. So they wind up coming up with this plan, and High Evolutionary has this thing that can like disperse their antidote along, I don't know, all of Earth or whatever. So we see Talon and Sync wind up going on this mission together to meet up with High Evolutionary, and they wind up fighting with each other. Now, what you get at the end of this comic is not to be expected. It's definitely a very weird and different surprise. So this could be very interesting for some, and some others might not even care, because Talon is just another version of Laura. She's just the older version that was stuck in the vault originally. So if you don't care about the older version of Laura, you might be like, oh, whatever. And you know, for me personally, like, I'm not a huge fan of Sync. I just think he's like OP in my opinion, where he could just get everyone's freaking power and he's like solves everything. But it is an interesting twist at the end of the day. So I think I'm gonna just give this one a C-. I just wish there was better artwork in this book where it could have bolstered this comic book's grade in general. The Amazing Spider-Man. This is issue 42. The gang war continues. Legacy numbering 936, 28 pages. Obviously, this one is written by Zeb Wells. John Romita Jr. does the artwork in here, and the artwork is just very depressing in my eyes. I feel like this comic's artwork is just getting lazier and lazier. Pure being is we see a lot of pages like this, just faces. That is literally it. That's what John Romita Jr. has basically become. Just a face person, right? Because he can't draw anything else. There is no real action in this comic, and that takes this comic down tremendously. And even the facial expressions, to be honest, are not even that great. And that is horrible, right? Especially after reading Ultimate Spider-Man or seeing artists on Amazing Spider-Man draw. He should not be on this comic book, and it takes it down tremendously. The artwork in this book should be top notch. It could take a very average book right now and bolster it up tremendously if you had good artwork, because the fight scenes could be better. We're getting to the point here with the artwork from John Romita Jr. where when he did the Superman comics, where he wouldn't even draw a cape on freaking Batman when Batman was in the comic book. So that's how poor this art is getting, in my opinion. So let's talk about the story here. The story doesn't really offer all that much, in my opinion, at this point either. We get a lot of more discussion between the gang members about, we're going to fight this person, and we're going to meet up with this person, and we're going to give them an ultimatum, and I'm going to give them an ultimatum. And then by the time you wind up getting to the end of this book, all you get is them meeting in a park, and it looks like they're going to do this crazy battle. Again, go back to the First Strike story, where it wasn't drawn by John Romita, and look at the stakes there in that very first part. Now compare that book to this book and tell me it seems like it's two completely different stories at this point. This is definitely a disappointment in my eyes. It keeps going down every time it comes up or it comes out. Hopefully it improves as it concludes, but man, it's just not looking good right now, guys. I'm gonna give this one a C-. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Nightwing, issue 110. This is a 40-page comic for $5. This book is written by Tom Taylor. The art is done by Sammy Bassere. The artwork is pretty good in this comic. I do like seeing Garo Spores getting killed in here. We get introduced to the new character, and we kind of get a little bit of her history, as well as she gets to control like these spores and the animals in general, and her name is Apex Ava. And it was kind of cool seeing her little origin story of how she became what she was. Now, it's about time that when it comes to Nightwing here, that it tied into what's going on in Beast World, okay? So we got the story, a little bit of her, and then we wound up getting to see Damian here in this comic book as he was transformed, and they're trying to cure him. And his name here is called, like, I think Mr. Mittens, and he's like in this underground battle. And it was cool seeing like Nightwing and everybody kind of just like try to rescue him and stuff. Again, the artwork is fun. I think this was a pretty good story overall, but nothing really spectacular at the same time. I do like the origin story of this new character going forward. So for me, Nightwing has never been a book that's been fantastic, right? It's just about time that it's tying into what's going on here. So I'm going to give this one a C. It was average. It had some good moments, and you know, I always say I'm going to drop it, but I just never do. Justice League vs. Godzilla vs. Kong, issue 4. This is a 40-page comic for $5. We have Brian Buccellato, who is the writer. The art is done by Tom Derenick. The artwork's good in this comic book. I do feel like, though, based off of the turn of the year, this book did lose a little bit of its momentum, especially of all the other comic books that came out. And I feel like this book was a little bit weaker than the other issues that's come out of this. We've seen Superman, who's out of play in this comic. They're trying to, give him his... put him in a rehabilitation chamber by giving him, putting him in this machine and giving him, sun rays and stuff like that. We get to see Lois talk to him going, oh yeah, you were going to propose to me. My answer is yes, just get better. Promise me this, promise me that. We get to see Lex Luthor developing a machine, and then we wind up going to Atlantis, where we get to see another Titan that's underwater, and we get to see heroes trying to battle this creature, and then the Atlanteans release this Kraken. So there's going to be this big battle between the Kraken and this other creature and our superheroes. So this book is definitely an action flick in all stretches of the imagination. That's what it is, right? It's just a fun book. I'm going to give this one a C+. You just can't take it seriously. If you have extra money to read it, go ahead and read it. If you read the other 3 issues in itself, go ahead and invest into it. Just finish it at this point. It is a little pricey, though. It's like a $6 comic book. So it is what it is at this point. It was fine for me. Wonder Woman issue 5, written by Tom King. Guys, this is a 40-page comic for $5. The artwork is done by Daniel Sampry in here. The artwork is really good, man. I love the artwork. The characters look good when there's not all these grids and stuff like that, but when you see the action scenes and just really good facial expressions, I love the way all the characters look, right? Just they look good, man. I love it. And again, we get introduced to Donna Troy in here. We wind up seeing Casey in here as well, so you get reintroduced to all the Wonder Girls. And this book was probably one of the better Wonder Woman books that I have read, because it was cool to see all these new characters and all these new villains in here once again. Or not, I should say new villains, but just villains just in general. But for me, unfortunately, when it comes to Tom King's writing, everything is so long and drawn out, and I tend to get bored with that type of writing. It's long-winded, right? And it just tends to just bore me. And maybe I have to read this comic in just not in one sitting, or make it the last comic or the first comic I read for the day. But I do feel like this was the best issue in quite some time when it came to the Wonder Woman book. That is just my opinion. And I'm curious to see now that we have these Wonder Girls and these villains in play, and this Sovereign guy, what's going to happen in the long term here. Maybe the action will start to ramp up. I think maybe that's my thing with it. There's not a lot of action. There's just a lot of sitting around and talking, right? But again, I'm going to give this one a C+. I think this was better, and I guess maybe I will stick with it and see what happens going forward. I am real curious in the comments below. Are you guys sticking with Wonder Woman at this point? Phantom Road issue 8. You want to talk about a weird book? Yeah, this is it, man. 28 pages for $4, written by the man himself, Jeff Lemire. Gabriel Hernandez Walta is the artist in this book. Here's what the characters look like, right? And then they're constantly always fighting these weird upside down zombie creatures. And see, this is the way they look right here. And so we've seen a lot of this in this comic, but there is definitely something going on. There is this weird egg that these guys are carrying, which is Beverly and Dominic. They're the main characters in here. And they're just in this upside down world, and they go to these pit stops, these truck stops, and these are supposed safe zones, and there's this strange guy that they call Hawaii in there that gives them all the tips to survive this world, and they can't let go of this supposed egg, because if they do, right, they get sick or they could possibly die, so they're like stuck with this thing. So we wind up seeing our main characters here go to a hotel room, and then something happens with the egg by the time you got to the end of it, and you're just like, oh shit. And here's the spoiler, like, now it's a baby little upside down creature. Now are they going to have to take care of this baby? Like, it's just so freaking weird. It always raises more questions before your questions are solved. Like, I have no idea where this book is going, but I totally love it, man. This is a fun book. I just want a little bit more story progression. So for that, I'm going to give it a B-, but I definitely recommend this book. This would be a great book to read in trade. Capwolf and the Howling Commandos. This is issue 4, the conclusion to this series. This is 28 pages. This is $4 comic book, written by Stephanie Phillips, and the artist is done by Carlos Magno. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Art is always really good in this comic book. Capwolf looks absolutely amazing. The fight scenes are great. The facial expressions are really good in this comic. I was always just on the edge of my seat every time an issue came out of this, because it just balls to the walls action, and it just kind of reminded me a little bit of a cheap horror flicks. And at the end, there's this nice little kiss with Dum Dum Doug in there, and it was just awesome, man. Overall, this was just the conclusion to Capwolf, who got infected by another werewolf, defeating Nazis, right? And there's basically no cure for Capwolf at this point in time, but it was just fun to see the whole conclusion to all of this. And the main enemy supposedly dies, the one that was responsible for Captain America's transformation. And obviously there's going to be missions in the future in here as well. And at the end, you wind up seeing the return of Nick Fury, who was severely injured after like the first issue in this comic book. I never thought that Stephanie Phillips could pull off a cool Capwolf book, but she did, and it's really, really good in my eyes. So I'm going to give this one a B-. Again, it just reminds you of a just little action flick, right, with some horror elements to it. So if it's still on the shelf, or maybe there's a little trade that comes out with it, you know, go ahead, check it out. Invincible Iron Man, this is issue 14. Probably the best X book there is going right now. This is 28 pages for $4, legacy numbering 664. Jerry Duggan actually writes this comic book, which is, in my opinion at the moment, better than X-Men. The artist here is done by Andrea DeVito. The artwork is really good in here. We have Emma Frost and we have Tony Stark in here, and they are getting it on. So you would think that the marriage in this comic book, yes, they did get married for the convenience of trying to stop Orcus, has developed into something more. There's a little bit more relationship involved here, because Tony Stark is struggling with certain situations, and Emma is using her seductive ways, going, you know, I have a way of making men forget, and her and him, they just get it on in here. And this story does focus a little bit more on Forge and Riri Williams, on her having those rings and her dispersing those rings as well. They're creating an armada in order to stop Orcus. It's a way to stop all those sentinels that have been built by Fei Long, who is the guy that wanted to go to Mars and all that other stuff like that. So overall, this is definitely a really fun issue, and there's definitely a nice little surprise at the end of this comic as well. So this book is pretty awesome. I'm going to give it a B+, a solid read. I love this Iron Man book ever since the beginning. It's definitely something different. I love the relationships here, and we'll see where it goes from here. The Bloody Dozen, A Tale of the Shrouded College. This is issue 2. This is a 32-page comic for $4. Charles Soule is the writer here. Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque is the artist. The artwork in this book is cool, man. It's a little bit cartoony, but it's really good. The facial expressions are are great in this comic. All the characters look nice. It's just a really fun comic to look at. And what this comic is about is a family who is very much like disjointed. They don't get along, and they're all like astronauts. They've all been, at one point connected to space, right? And but they have this crazy checkered past, and they've been recruited by this cult or whatever it is, this vampires, whatever the hell they are, to go into space and to destroy all these other vampires. And you get to learn the history of like why they were sent into space by the sun so they wouldn't come out and whatnot. It's just a very interesting story that I did not expect that I would not like. I just think that all the characters are very humorous, and it's just a story that's so far-fetched that it's just entertaining, right? And obviously this group that's sending this family out there is kind of bribing them for like internal youth, right? So they're kind of stuck like that, and they're like, oh, should we do the mission or shouldn't we? And they decide to do it, and you get to see some relationships. And by the time they wind up getting to the crazy, I don't know what this is, this little space station that the vampires are kept next to the sun, right, to truly destroy them, there's another ship there, maybe trying to get to them first. It's just a fun book, man. I really liked it. It's totally, up my alley here. So again, it's another B+ book for me. If you're looking for something different, if you like Charles Soule writing, right, go ahead, check this one out. Batman Superman World's Finest issue 23. This is 32 pages for $4. Yes, guys, we have Mark Waid who writes the book, David Mora who continues to do the stellar artwork on this comic book. It looks like $1 million, man. This book is so awesome, dude. I just love all the action scenes that happen in this comic. I mean, it makes it really stand out this week with those action scenes. And we basically get to see Superman, Batman, Kingdom Come Superman, and Batman fight against Gog in here, and they're also trying to persuade David on not to follow his lead, because what can happen is it can open up this boom tube, and they're trying to take on Darkseid, and they're trying to get the anti-equation, and just all hell could break loose. And let's just say by the time you wind up getting to the end of this book, it looks like it's just too late for our heroes, and yeah, shit hits the wall, man. Really solid book. I really have enjoyed this story overall. I gotta give this one an A-. Really entertaining. I can't wait to see what happens in the annual, because we're gonna get maybe the conclusion to that and then another story as well. The Deviant, this is issue 3. This is a 32-page comic for $4, written by James Tynion IV. Josh Hickson is the artist in the character. Now, this story is a little bit slower of a story, but what this does is this adds depth to what's been going on in this particular comic book. We wind up getting to see our main character, who's been writing this story about this supposed serial killer that is like a Santa Claus murderer, right? And this guy was actually framed, and you wind up getting to see that FBI detective go through that situation back in 73, and him actually arresting the person that he thought was the serial killer. Very interesting. Again, it really added depth to this particular story. It didn't really add, I want to say, story to what's currently going on, but you understand now the history of two of the major players in this comic book, which I found very entertaining. This is a solid read, and I can't wait now to see who the actual real killer is now in modern day, because there is a copycat killer. Really good book. I definitely recommend it. If you haven't read it though yet, I would say wait till it comes out in trade, because you'll be completely lost. I don't know if you can find the first couple issues on the rack anyway, but yeah, really good book here, guys. Go ahead, check it out. This is an A- for me. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 303. This book is written by Larry Hama. The art is done by Chris Mooneyham. The artwork in this book is actually really good, and I really enjoyed this particular issue as we get to see Serpentor here as he is like a smart zombie with Dr. Mindbender, and he's coming to an agreement with, I forgot these people's name, this particular race, to enhance their Vipers, right? And once they enhance the Vipers, they wind up going to like the G.I. Joe like particular headquarters where Scarlet and Snake Eyes actually are, and you wind up getting to see this cool little fight between the characters. So I like that there was action in this particular issue and some build up as well. This book is a lot of fun in my opinion. I really liked the first issue. It was something different. I didn't expect it to be the way that it was, but the more that I'm reading it, I'm fine with it. I enjoy it. I am a fan of G.I. Joe. I love seeing all these characters. Another A- book for me. We'll see where it goes from here. Superman issue 10. Guys, Superman's been really good lately. This is legacy numbering 853, 32 pages, $5 comic book. This book is written by Joshua Williamson. The art here is done by Bruno Redondo, who did Nightwing, and I love Redondo's artwork. I think it looks really, really good. And this book is set in the Wild Wild West, you know? And I'm not really like a Western guy, but this book was really well done as Superman is still recovering from his injury. And he winds up going against Terra Man here because he's got to try to wind up going back to the future, right? It kind of reminded me of Back to the Future a little bit here. And we wind up getting to see Superman team up with Marilyn Moonlight, which is a cool character, and you wind up getting to see a little bit of her origin story as well, which really fleshed out the character. I really enjoyed it. And then at the end, you wind up seeing him return back, and then obviously we're getting ready for the next story. This book is really good, man. I've enjoyed it. This is an A book in my eyes. Definitely, if you're not reading Superman, what are you waiting for, guys? Jump on board. Kill Your Darlings, this is issue 5. This is a 32-page comic for $4. We have the beginning of a new story arc here, guys. This is written by Ethan S. Parker. The artwork is done by Griffin Sheridan. My shop did not have this in stock, so I had to read this one digitally, and I'm telling you, if you can get your hands on this book, definitely go ahead and do that, because in this new story arc, we get introduced to Rose's mother back in 1987, right before Rose was born. We got to see that her mother was a struggling waitress. She wound up getting knocked up, and she was pregnant, and she's forced to live on her own. She goes into labor. She has to drive herself to the hospital, and something horrific happens on the side of the road to the point where she's forced that she cannot help this person. And because of this act, you're led to believe that everything that has happened in this comic book is because of what happened that day on the side of the road. This book was a super quick read, but that did not deter me in any stretch of the imagination because the artwork was awesome and it told the story for you. I absolutely love this series. I absolutely love the book. This is definitely a must read, an A+, a top pick for me this week. Go ahead, if you guys have never read Kill Your Darlings, go ahead and read it as soon as possible. So there you have it, webheads, a very lengthy episode of After the Pull. There was a lot of comics again this week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below everything that you loved. And again, I'll leave you worthy ones right here talking about the newest issue ones that came out for this comic book week. And as always, guys, support the local shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, so we can talk about these comics, read your comics. Guys, I'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye.